I'm going to call this meeting to order. Amy, go ahead and take the roll call.
Okay, Mayor Bogenreith.
Here.
Ms. Hoffman.
Here.
Ms. Burhoop.
Here.
Ms. Strain. Here. And Mr. Tucker.
Here.
All right, say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Commissioner, Department Head, approval of agenda. And I think we'll have a motion to just move one item, which would be item 3-4, which is the selection of commissioner departments. Since Julie's got to leave early, we'd like to take care of that at the front.
So, just the first,
Just section 3 and then 1-4, which is the selection of commissioner departments. We just moved that to the beginning.
oh, 3 and first 2 on 4.
It's like number 3 and then the little IV
Yeah,
in Rome.
but are you just going to do the first 2 on 4 or all 4?
Oh, we do all 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So is there a second to that motion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we will change that on the agenda, otherwise, as stated. And then we need an approval of a motion for the
So
approval of the
moved
minutes.
for the adjusted agenda.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes from April 28th. Do we have a motion for that?
A motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Commissioner, Department Head, and Community Board reports.
Well, just, only thing I would mention is McCook Lake Association and the Isaac Walton League, I think, had a big cleanup out at the lake this weekend. I was out there, I think Jessica was out there too. I just wanted to mention that Rusty did line up the dumpsters for that. I think he had 2 on the west side and 1 at the boat ramp. The one at the boat ramp didn't get used that much, but he moved it over to the west side for him to finish the cleanup over there.
Is that something we could pay for as a city for those dumpsters?
Yeah, we are.
Okay,
We can? Well,
that'd be good,
good.
I think.
The only other thing that I would mention is our DC trip, but I'll let you.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Jeff and I were both on the Siouxland Chamber trip, and we had good meetings with Senator Rounds, a quick meeting with Dusty Johnson. We also had a private side meeting with a representative, a deputy assistant to the Director of Homeland Security, Christy Noem, and that was good as well. Senator Round's office has a staffer that specifically works with the Army Corps of Engineers, so we're going to stay in touch with him to help us through the process, so we have a good contact there. And then with our private meeting with the FEMA assistant, she agreed to be our liaison to make sure that any FEMA issues that may come up through the mitigation or any reimbursement process, she is going to keep us in touch with the right people to make sure it's moving along. So those were some of the highlights. Anything you got to add, Jeff?
I would just say Senator Rounds has been absolutely instrumental in this. I had reported that the county had submitted a letter of intent to the Corps of Engineers to restudy the 1976 mitigation plan that's in place that calls for the closure of Exit 4. We were originally told by the Corps of Engineers that could maybe get funded in fiscal year 27, which is 2 years from now, but Senator Rounds is insistent on trying to get that project moved up and considered in a more timely manner. So he's very valuable on that. And then also Senator Rounds is a big advocate for the North Shore Bypass project. And made comment as to the importance of that project to him and to the area. So overall, it was good meetings. We need to make sure that we can stay in touch with the people that we were in contact with, and then make sure we get the senators and the representatives to come back to North Sioux City in short order.
All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, we'll move on to community input, and I would like to state that if anyone has comments on a specific item on the agenda, we're going to allow you to bring that up at the time we're discussing it. We're going to try this for a while. But if it's not on the agenda, you're welcome to come up and speak during this community input period if it's not on the agenda. But if it is on the agenda, we welcome you to take a minute and speak to us. Yeah. So, little change of format, but we welcome you to do that. And that, I think, came from Scott Olson on Penrose. It's a good idea. So, community input. If it's not on the agenda and you'd like to speak, Anna?
It's pretty sad that you know me.
No, that's good.
Yeah, I'm on 60 North Shore. My problem is that we have been having small children playing in the gutter between me and Kathy, specifically trying to go in and out of the culvert that's there. So I know that it's like a broken record. I did talk with the school because I had to sign a paper saying I wouldn't turn them in for trespassing while they were filling the dirt in. And they seemed to think that they were going to start around the 15th of this month with starting to fill in dirt and stuff.
The school district.
The school district, yes. But it's still concerning because the part where the culvert is isn't part of what they're going to be filling in.
We can
So-
put a gate on it or something,
A gate on the culvert.
like a wire mesh or something.
Yeah.
It would still let water in, but
Yeah,
wouldn't let kids.
It's a good idea.
because the one specific was like 5 years old by itself.
Mm.
So it is a concern because it's steep there and there's a lot of debris in there that he could get hurt on. So
Good to know.
that's my only concern, but
Yeah.
thank you guys for everything you're trying to get done for us. It's really appreciated, so.
Good.
we
Thank you,
appreciate
Anna.
that.
Anyone else?
Hello, Mike Albright, 221 West Shore Drive. Last week Julie wasn't able to attend, but phoned in. And I don't know if that's something that's been allowed as part of, going back to COVID when in-person meetings weren't really looked upon favorably at times. But I question, is that allowed in our commission rules, in state law? Just a question that came to my mind. I know she didn't make any motions during last week's meeting, but did second a couple of them, and it's your phone, not 100% sure who's there, but I'm just wondering if that is something that's allowed in South Dakota law regarding commission meetings.
I could speak to that if you'd like.
Be great.
Under the South Dakota Open Meetings Act, that is permitted to have virtual or even digital participation. As long as the person can be heard at the roll call, they're counted as being in attendance at that meeting. So it is not anything that's a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay,
There are some different rules that we would need to abide by if we were going to have, for example, Zoom participation, making that available to others who also participate that way. But as long as there is a majority that are here in person at our open meetings, there's nothing
Sure.
that's an issue there. If we had everyone participating in a digital or phone meeting, then we need to provide availability for the public to also do that. But for one member to do that, that's
Sure.
not an issue. We've had, at least in the time period that I've been a city attorney, I think one or two previous times during the aldermanic form of government where we had a person that would call in and participate in that way as well.
Are they allowed to introduce motions or second motions, and that, there's no limitations on their
There's-
participation?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. And on, just to follow up to the previous question on putting mesh in front of a culvert, yeah, it lets water through, but we all saw what happened with corn stalks last year, and the mesh will get plugged up and then the water won't flow. So just something to think about.
All right, thanks, Mike. And it will be probably more important now that there's only 5 members, that occasionally we may have to do it over the phone, especially when there's not 9 up here. It becomes probably a little more important, but thank you for that. Any others?
I'm Nancy Albright at 221 West Shore Drive. I had 2 questions, because I always do 2s or 4s, but in the event of a future flood, with your current mitigation plan, who is responsible for the cleanup? So going through this mitigation plan, what will happen if the water doesn't go the direction you want or you anticipate, and we again flood? So we go back to square one with the lake cleanup and the resident cleanup?
I guess I'll take that.
Sure.
You know, if the mitigation plan that we're proposing or the concepts that we're looking at would be a city-owned improvement, so we would, you know, if corn stalks went into the lake, I guess we'd have to consider cleaning that up at that time, but I don't anticipate it not working, otherwise I wouldn't be pitching it.
So will this be part of your mitigation plan? Will you address this in your mitigation plan?
The cleanup?
Correct.
And, yeah.
Because we have not talked about that here, and that's something that's very important. As I'm a flood victim, and as I'm cleaning up my property, it's like, well, I'm going to do this every 2 years. I've already lived through a 100-year flood in the dunes, so now I'm not sure what number this is. For me, it's number 4, so I'm becoming an expert. But that goes into my second question. For any disaster that we have in North Sioux City, what plan are we putting into place? In the dunes in 2011, we had, and you can correct me on this, I'm not sure how many days, we had 5 days notice water was coming. What are we doing as citizens, as the commission? What are we doing to notify residents prior to and putting a plan in place so we have boots on the ground the morning after, the day of? Will we have sandbag stations? Will we have bathrooms? Will we have water? Will we have a place to shower? Will we have, at the event center in Tyson, we had wash machine stations. I slept at the school during the dunes flood. What plans and who's in charge of this? So when I look at a mitigation plan, I don't just look at what we're going to do to direct the water, it's before and after.
The mitigation plan that we're presenting is just that, a plan to mitigate against floodwaters. What you're talking about is an emergency operations plan that we have started to work on internally. We've been meeting, our staff has been meeting, that we meet 4 or 5 times now over at the fire station to discuss, you know, what are our protocols moving forward in the event of a thunderstorm, tornado, flood. We hope to combine all that into an emergency operations plan. The other part of that is we also implemented the Code Red response system, that if you've signed up, you will get emergency notifications on everything from high wind events to tornadoes to floods and all that stuff. So you'll have that notification. If you have your phone with you, you will get that notification. So there have been some changes made, and we still need to make more as the time goes on. It'll take a little while to assemble the emergency operations plan, but most communities this size don't have an emergency operations plan, but we're going to put one in place. Most communities this size rely on the county to do that. We're not going to rely solely on the county. We'll have to work with them through the protocols established by South Dakota Emergency Management. So we are working on those things, and those things are being considered.
How much bigger or smaller are we from the Dakota Dunes area?
What's that?
How much bigger or smaller are we from the Dakota Dunes area?
Roughly the same population.
So in 2011, we had a good plan in place, correct?
In 2011, well, I was part of that plan, and I'd like to say it was good, but it was not as formalized as you would think. I mean, we did a lot of that on the fly too, back then with the county emergency management.
I lived there, so I remember sandbagging for 3 days straight. And I don't remember having that opportunity to save my home here. So I hope that you all volunteered to be part of this commission. You all signed up for this. I'm looking forward to the plan so that I can be safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Anyone else? All right, we will move into the agenda. So we are moving section 3.4 up next, and this shouldn't take very long. We're just gonna select commissioner departments, and we're fortunate to have a strong city manager in place. So hopefully these aren't as arduous as maybe for some communities that don't have a city manager, but in this case, we do. But, and also I would hope that if you would like to serve in one of these roles, that you go ahead and vote for yourself, because we don't have very many members here. So if you want a role, please vote for yourself. First up is public safety. So I guess I would entertain motions for someone who would like to serve in public safety.
I'll motion myself to take public safety.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Same sign? Okay. Jessica's, that's your role then, as public
I can
safety?
handle those hooligans.
Okay. Next is Public Works. Do we have a motion for Public Works?
I make a motion for Vince Tucker.
I was just gonna nominate myself.
I'll
Yes.
second it.
And we have a second? Is there any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign? Okay, Vince,
Thank you.
that's your job. Next is Utilities. I would like to make a motion for Julie to serve on Utilities.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Okay, that motion carries. And then Finance.
I'll make a motion that Lynn be the Commissioner of Finance.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on that? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion carries. Okay, those are set. So now we can go back to the top of the agenda. So next up is McCook Lake Mitigation. Concepts and Modeling is the first item.
Just a couple things. Ross and John were unable to attend today, but what I really wanted to, you've had this introduced to you now for 2 meetings or 3 meetings. And I just kind of wanted to hear some of the thoughts that you guys might have on some of these concepts that we're presenting, the pluses, the minuses. One of the things that we need to do is start narrowing down, and maybe we don't have to get down to which option specifically, but we do need to understand whether or not we're going to pursue this line of mitigation moving forward. And could you maybe just put them up on the screen so that we could talk from, I did include it in your packet because you've had it in the last 2 packets and it's online, but I would just be interested to hear, you've seen the modeling, you've seen the videos, what kind of questions do you might have?
Well, I have one. I have a concern that we've got 2 options up here.
You're asking what kind of questions I have after seeing your modeling and video. I'm definitely interested.
Sounds like Chat GPT.
Well, he's interested.
Yeah, bring him up here, let's talk.
He might have the answers.
All right.
I guess what I'd like to bring up is we have two alternates being presented to us, and I would like to see a third alternate. I know Stockwell looked at a third option that could potentially avoid McCook Lake altogether, and we haven't really seen that, and we haven't, seen a cost to that, and if it's a feasible option. So I would like to see a third option brought to the public that would completely avoid McCook Lake. Because once I saw the budget numbers here, we're talking $20 million for these two plans that continue to dump the flood water into the lake. I know it would prevent erosion and probably prevent home damage, but we still would end up cleaning up the lake every time. And so I would like to see that third option brought forward. So hopefully you can communicate that to Stockwell. That would be my one concern.
So the third option would utilize Mud Lake as kind of the storage area, and then funnel it down to the west of that western outlet here. But I'll have Stockwell put that on a video and bring it to the next meeting so you can see.
See, and I agree. I think dumping all the water in McCook Lake didn't work out very well the first time. I don't think we want to put all of our eggs in a basket again and do that again. I'd like to see 2, 3, 4 options, like holding ponds, or where we're gonna drop some water off in some of the farmers' lands and pay them for it, or something like that. Something other than it's always McCook Lake, and I don't think that worked out very good last time.
Yeah, and even if it prevents erosion and prevents homes from going into it, you still have to clean it up every time. And to your point, Nancy, if there was another option, when we're talking this kind of money, up to $20 million, hopefully there's an option that could avoid McCook Lake altogether. And I think we need to look at it.
I agree.
I have two questions, actually. One, have we been doing any collaborating with the big Sioux group?
Yes, we have. We're part of that group. I actually wrote the letter that went to the Corps. I wrote it for the county. We've been involved in those meetings. Chris and I talked to Senator Rounds about those, and I am a little more optimistic today than I was before I went to DC when Senator Rounds had stated that he was going to try to get that bumped up and into fiscal year 26. So maybe that's a shorter term plan than I had originally thought. But until we have a better handle on that, I think it would be wise to continue to pursue these options. And like I said, you don't have to go forward with it, but I think we need to provide you the options to look at. And Vince had said we need to look at 3 or 4 or 5 options. There's just not that many options available other than these ones we're looking at, and then also the Mud Lake one is another option that we can look at. But when you're talking about that much water, it needs to be able to flow from A to B fairly quickly. And there's a lot, that would be a lot of water to store. Just to give you some perspective.
I don't mean totally. I mean as like another option, so all the water's not running into the lake. If it has a place to set for a little bit until the lake goes down a little bit, I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah,
It's a
because
big story.
these plans have, 6 to 8 feet of using McCook Lake as 6 to 8 feet of storage before it goes to the Missouri. Couldn't that be done with Mud Lake and dig it out deeper so that it could store before it runs to the Missouri River and affects downstream?
I guess that is theoretically possible. I just have to look at it, but that would probably be one of the only other options. If you scroll down a little bit, Amy, the other way, the other down.
I'd like to go to my second question,
Just
if
a
I
second.
could.
Go back up. So basically, though, you're dealing with the area between the bridge up here at the racetrack south. I mean, it's not going to go over the other way because of the interstate bridge and stuff, but so this is the only area you have that you have to protect. You have to protect McCook Lake against this flood. Is between the bridge up by Jefferson and exit 4. So it just limits your ability to store water. I mean, that little triangle there's not going to store that much water.
But if this diversion channel
Could get it to Mud Lake.
remained, but then another channel was built west to get to Good Enough and Mud Lake, maybe those two areas could be dug out deeper to create storage.
Possibly.
And is that a natural route to the river anyway?
The natural route to the river is McCook Lake
Well, I mean, wasn't Mud Lake
and Mud Lake.
I mean, wasn't that a natural flow to the river at some point in time anyway?
I don't know.
My second question, and I don't know, maybe it's the elephant in the room, but why don't we take a look at doing something with the Big Sioux River? The Big Sioux River is loaded with appliances, rubbish, trees, concrete. I know that it can be done. It may be more expensive, but to me, if we can do something, I'm not saying that we do it exactly like Perry Creek, but you go up north, maybe you go as far as Haywarden. They're always in the drink, and try to build something out, clean up some of the river itself.
I would think the Corps of Engineers scope of work will look at that. That's the bigger picture item that takes it all the way up. You know, the Corps of Engineers long-term mitigation plan could occur up by north of Elk Point, and take that water off of the river before it even gets here. But that's for them to study. The only thing that we have control over locally is this mitigation plan and the area between the bridge and McCook Lake. And this mitigation plan is only the McCook Lake mitigation plan. It protects only McCook Lake.
It is, but every day I look at the lake, I look at North Shore, and how many people have been decimated up there. That does not go away. It is not going to go away. I am terribly opposed to running it back into McCook Lake again. And I just think that there has to be another option that can be looked at.
Again, the two options, you know, we'll look at the McCook Lake, or the Mud Lake option, like Chris said. The other option is to let the Corps of Engineers do their study and mitigate it further north. That way it is protecting a lot more than just McCook Lake, but that's a Corps of Engineers undertaking. That's way more jurisdictions than we just have control over. So there is other options. One is the Mud Lake and one is the long-term project with the Corps. The problem with the Corps of Engineers projects is it may take a while to get. And so.
But this, let's say alternate 3 is going to Mud Lake, that could become part of the Army Corps' long-term plan. It could be a piece of it. It's the piece we have control over, but so.
Yeah, all of this could become part of that plan, but we have to just continue to study it so we have the facts of what can be done.
Even down at what I call the Dyke Road, down at the end where it goes out, I don't know that either of those routes are the best for North Sioux City or McCook Lake
You
residents.
talk about the Dyke Road, are you talking about Hoffman Road or?
Hoffman or Shequin, it's got to be one of the two at the two that we have.
I just know it as Hoffman Road, I don't know it as the Dyke Road, but that road's at 1,100, an elevation of 1,100. That's why when the water comes over McCook Lake, it can't get any further than that until it gets to an elevation of 1,100, and their house is on McCook Lake below that elevation. So that's part of the reason you need to make a bigger outlet down by the river. And, you know, there's a lot of different components to this. It's
Yeah.
just not funneling it into McCook Lake. It's
But the
funneling
Lake
out of.
Association has just been up with the Supreme Court, the South Dakota Supreme Court, not wanting this canal south of the Dyke Road. And now we're looking at an option to put the water right there. I just.
Well, yeah, it's only an option as opposed to what happened in June. I mean, otherwise it's not an option. I mean, it wouldn't be proposed unless it would fix the June of 2024 problem. But,
And Lord willing, it would always stay dry.
Yeah, I mean, 99.9% it would always stay dry, you're right. But it is an option, and I'm not here to pick the options, I'm just here to present options to you for you to pick. And so, I will bring that third option to the next meeting, and we can discuss it further, with an eye on May 30th, date, so that we can at least submit an application to get a holding spot for some mitigation dollars, whether it be for a continued study or for an actual project. That's kind of our deadline, that's our goal.
As far as basement elevations, I'm aware of some on south end of the lake that are as low as 1091 with alternate 1 or 2. Are those protected?
Scroll, there's a figure on there. Right there. So the lowest walkout basement was surveyed at 1098, according to Stockwell. Now, if you know some lower ones, we need to find that out.
I'm aware of a 1091,
What's the address, you know?
629.
Are you sure? Your dad's up higher than that, Chris. Isn't it 1101?
Because 1091, that would be underwater during
Need to
rain.
check on that.
I think it's
Need to check on that
1101.
one.
But yeah, so this diagram kind of shows the storage of McCook Lake, and it would go up to the high water level. The top line is what occurred in June of 2024. This line down is what would only occur under this project. It would get it that high, and then it would start going over the top and then through the channel out to the river. So,
Okay, we'll check on that one.
And even if we had the money, the 20 mil or whatever, it'd still take 3 to 5 years to build this bad boy.
at least. Yeah. And so I guess you would want to weigh that against what the Corps says they would take. And then you ask yourself, well, 3 to 5 years to build this, or 15 years to build the Corps project, where do you want your exposure to be? Is it 15 years? Are you comfortable with that? Or is it 3 to 5? That's your decision to make, but it's just sometimes you can't get that information fast enough. This information will be available before the Corps' information will. And so, in my mind, you keep developing this project, and if that other one falls off the table, you at least have something to fall back on and build if you want to.
Because right now, this is a 3 to 5 year solution, short term. The Army Corps solution might be 10 plus years.
So that's the kind of table you're sitting at right now is, trying to come up with solutions and then weigh out the timetables and the cost and what the frequency of the events are. Like I said, this event that happened in 2024 to McCook Lake is 1/100th of 1% chance of happening in any given year. And so, but it doesn't do you any good if it's happening if it happens this year or the next year or the year after that. This just provides you something to look at and consider.
Well, and I'm kind of concerned, we're sitting at almost a year, and this is the first thing that we've come up with, and the more we kick the can down the road and we don't come up with something, the more problem, more exposure we have, as you pointed out, but we just gotta get something done for these people.
Well,
Totally.
Those basement elevations were on the 200 block of Suncoast, but did not go down Lake Shore.
Yeah, we'll have to look into some of those lakeshore.
I didn't go down Lake Shore side, those were off Suncoast, South Lakes, walkout basements.
There might be a couple on Lake Shore, like 2 or 3, I'm thinking.
I think Stockwell has LiDAR information for the lake, so that might be where they got it from, but I'd have to ask them.
Yeah, sounds like we definitely need to check some all the way down the lake.
I went with them and shot those again, there's 3 or 4 houses on Suncoast, those elevations are correct, I was with them when they shot those. That wasn't LiDAR.
questions on that? So what
I
I'm,
have some other ones, but I'd wait until John is here.
Yes, go ahead. Please state your name and address.
Dan Tagstrom, 16 Deer Run Circle. I'm also on the task force for the Union County flood, and we've looked at that option that you're talking about in Mud Lake, but in order to get it there, you have to go through Lake Goodenough and underneath the road, and that's one of the options of either a bridge or a box culvert there. But in order to put the water into Lake Goodenough, it's been flooded 4 times now. My backyard, my house, and my 4 neighbors. So a dike would have to be put all the way around the backside of Deer Run and around those houses there where the red barn is, where the dentist lives, and also partially down through Adams to protect Windstone, both at the upper end and the lower end, because the water is going to tend to flow that way too into, so it's not just an easy thing where you put water into Lake Goodenough and it's done with.
Right, have to flow.
And besides, I don't think you can legally divert water on private property, which all of that over there is. Rasmussen's, LaFleur's, mine, and 3 other people own that lake.
all of these options will require private property participation.
I understand that.
And I guess it was always my goal to, that any of these mitigation plans that we have to pass to protect everybody. You can't move the problem just from one side to the other. And so
That's my only point.
That's
yeah.
a definite constraint for anything we do here.
Yeah, that's my point where, it sounds easy, put the water over there because it looks low, but all you're doing is putting the water on somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And it could be a very long channel that had to be dug, and these alternate 1 and 2 have long channels
Right.
south of the lake
Right.
to get to the river.
Right.
These channels may need to be dug through good enough and into mud to
Right.
solve the problem.
Right.
So that we're not pushing it on someone else.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. And you
Yeah.
have to have levees on the other side of the channel to keep
Mhm.
it from going that way.
And I guess there was a bridge there at one time on
Oh,
the
yeah.
highway, and they replaced it with some small culverts.
Yeah, I remember the bridge. So, and then now it's a culvert no bigger than this.
And one
No
of
wonder
the,
it backs up.
one of the things I've been preaching is these decisions need to be made on model
Right.
data.
Right.
It can't be made on hyperbole and conjecture. It's got to be made on fact, and that's why I'm trying to present these models to you so you can see what happens to this water under different circumstances. We'll bring that Mud Lake one to you hopefully next week.
And we're also doing modeling with the Union County Flood
Mhm.
Task Force, so,
And we probably need to coordinate some of that too.
right. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other part of this discussion is the work order, and Amy, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up for me. Stockwell has done a lot of this work without a contract to date, and if you look at the work order, which has been in your last 2 meeting packets and is here on your screen, I'd like the commission to consider this at their next meeting. John should be here, be able to answer any questions, but if you scroll down to some of the scope items, they're probably down for that $313,000 contract amount. They're down into, keep going. They're down into probably 4.5. And they're considering these 2 options. Now we're adding another option to it. And then they'll get into phase 5, which is the narrative report. And if you keep going, and then to the preliminary design for one of these, we'll get it to 30% so we can have a little more firm cost estimates. And that's what we'll use to drive the FEMA mitigation grant.
Is it possible we could eliminate one of the designs if we chose 2 of the 3 options?
We're gonna have to probably narrow this down to one. If you scroll up a little bit or down, whatever, right there, 4.5. There are your two options that we just talked about. The third option we're adding is gonna be the Mud Lake option. And so, I'd ask you to read through that. If you have any questions prior to next meeting, let me know. I'll get them to John, and then ask you to consider this. They've been working without a contract since January on this.
So by May 30th, you would like to choose one of the options? Okay.
At least get a strong direction towards one. We could always come back to one, but we need to have some pretty good direction by then. Like I said, we'll be developing this project as we're developing the Corps of Engineers project. And as the Corps of Engineer project becomes more visible and more easily understood, then we can continue to make decisions as we go. But if we wait for the Corps of Engineers project to get wheels and get going, we will have lost a lot of time. So that's just my thought on it.
Any other questions on short-term flood mitigation? There will be input along the way.
One thing we probably will have is a public hearing on it to take input. Will there be a public vote on it? I can't answer that, and I don't think anybody here can until we get to that point, but.
Hopefully we can get enough feedback from the public that we have a clear direction to be able to vote on it.
I mean, if we have to do a general obligation bond or something like that, that will certainly be voted on. But as far as choosing one for this particular hazard mitigation grant, I don't think that's necessary yet, but when they make the final decision to build it, that's when some more discussion will have to be had.
Okay. Next week, we'll see that. All right. Moving on to South Dakota DOT pedestrian trail project that would connect Dakota Dunes, Sioux City, Dakota Dunes Trail to North Sioux City. I think Kent is here with HDR.
Yeah, Kent Ode is with HDR. They're the ones that are contracted with South Dakota DOT, correct?
Yep.
To design, to design the North Sioux City and Dakota Dunes Trail. Both Dakota Dunes and North Sioux City put in separate grant applications to build their particular trails to connect, and they'll be bid as one project, correct?
That's correct, yep.
So I just asked Kent to come and just kind of give you all an update and an introduction to the project if you hadn't been, an introduction to it and kind of lay it out for you as far as the timeline.
And the funding for this had already been awarded previously?
Yeah.
Yep.
22.
2022, I believe.
Okay.
We'll have to match, local match to make up the difference. I think each community got 400,000.
Yep, you received $400,000, and so your match is about $450,000 to build this full bike trail. So like Jeff said, I'll give you a little background summary of this project. So this is kind of two projects, one for Dakota Dunes, from Dakota Dunes Boulevard to North Shea Road, and one from North Shea Road up to River Drive for North Sioux City. Like Jeff said, two projects were bidding as one to try to maximize the size of this project to hopefully reduce construction costs in the long term. And you did receive $400,000 in funding to help build and design this project. So kind of looking at it as an exhibit, the yellow is where the shared use path is going on the west side of the road up Sioux Point Road towards Sodak Drive up to River Boulevard. Two areas I kind of just want to highlight here in green is a temporary easement that we needed from the developer adjacent to here. The reason we need this temporary easement is we're pushing that path as far west as possible and raising it up about 3 or 4 feet. And we're doing that in close collaboration with Stockwell and city employees, knowing that Sioux Point Road in the future may be reconstructed and realigned. And we want to put this path in a location that it doesn't have to be torn out in the future when we rebuild the roadway. So So this has kind of been the biggest holdup for us so far, but we did get this easement signed in the last few months, so we're ready to do construction for this area. The next area I want to highlight is just kind of between Belmont Avenue and River Drive. You'll see a gap in that yellow shared use path. So we also need temporary easements in here from the 7 residents on this block. We met with them individually and as a group, and they were not for this path going across their property. So I ultimately came to council about a year ago now and presented some different options. Some of those options were moving the trail to the east side of the road. Because there's so many utilities on the east side of the road, that cost was substantially higher, so it didn't make sense to move it. Another option was a bike lane, but again, we had to widen the road, so there was additional cost for that, and additional maintenance cost for pavement markings that go along with bike lanes. So our ultimate recommendation was just to hold off on this block, which the residents approved of and state council at the time approved of. So that way you can maximize your federal funding that you have right now in place. And you can always come back in the future and talk to these homeowners again later on and see if they're more willing to sign those temporary easements and move forward with this path.
But they'll just use the sidewalk then?
Yeah, so that's a good point. There is an existing sidewalk there in that block that can be used in the meantime.
How long do these funds last before they expire?
So you have, really there is no end date on them. I guess, looking at a schedule, we're looking at bid this project on May 21st. So construction would start next year.
Yeah, this is a pretty important connection along with the Dakota Dunes connection. It would allow people to go from Adams Nature Preserve all the way down on, instead of on the frontage, walking on the frontage road, they'd be on a pedestrian path. Then they could do that all the way from Adams Nature Preserve all the way down and go down to the point of South Dakota in the dunes, or they could go across the Big Sioux River Bridge that they're currently under construction and make it all the way down to, I suppose, Crave or Bev's on the River, whatever you want to call it.
Go down to Chautauqua Park?
Chautauqua Park.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a lot of pedestrian traffic surprisingly on that frontage road and on Sioux Point Road.
Jeff, so I know there's gonna be some hearings coming up with GOED on HUD money, HUD funds. Is it possible that some HUD funds could come in to play here to free up cash to help us with
It's possible.
more important projects
Yep. It's,
right now?
it's possible, yeah.
Okay. And those are coming up, those are this month?
May 21st are the listening sessions. But I think the next step on this project is to get the bids back on.
Yep, May 21st.
Council commission will then be asked to agree to that, right? Or concur with a DOT's?
Yep, so with your agreement, your cost estimate was $900,000 roughly. So if that came in higher than that, then the DOT will come back to you and see if you still want to move forward with the project. But you have agreed to pay for your share up to this point.
So you already agreed to it? Well, you didn't do it.
A previous council did?
Previous council.
Was that before the flood?
It was.
I don't know, I'm just concerned about cash flow right now for other projects.
So if it comes in below, or we can substitute CDBG money for it.
That's what I'm hoping, that there might be CDBG funds that could help with this, that would free up cash to help with a homeowner recovery fund or things like that for the residents.
Right. But now we just have to wait, see what the bids come in on the 18th, or is it 18th or the 21st?
21st of May,
What time is that?
usually 10 a.m.
Okay. So we should know that by noon. Okay. So this was just an informational item. We'll see what the bids come in at.
So we're already hooked in?
By grant agreement, unless it comes in way over budget, then you would have an option to say, well, that's too expensive, I don't want it. But that money's already been allocated on our end to this project. I mean, we've already allocated.
Even before the flood, it was
Yeah, I mean,
allocated.
it's been budgeted for it, so.
All right.
Okay, let's wait till the bid comes in then.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how the bids come in.
All right, thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks, Kent.
Thanks, Kent. Yes, no. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, we have one member has to leave. Okay,
Amy will note that.
What's that? Oh,
Just gonna go to the bathroom.
all right. Okay, moving on to the ordinances, organizational. So the first item is this a third reading of this?
No, this would be the first reading. The previous reviews that we've had have just been for your information and input. And so what is on the agenda tonight is for your action. In order to pass an ordinance, it needs to be, go through a first reading, and then within a certain period of time, you have a second reading, and both of those are approved, then it goes for publication, and goes into effect after 20 days after that is published. So for the reading tonight, we'll just read that first title, or the complete title of each of those. And then we would need a motion and a second to approve. You still have a quorum, even though we have one of your members that is left, but we still need the same amount of votes in order to approve that, which would be a majority vote for this type of ordinance.
Okay. Well, the first one is 2025-03, which was the ordinance repealing chapters 2.04, 2.06, and 2.2. I guess look for a motion on that.
And I just read the whole title, Chris, if
Oh,
you
okay,
want to.
sure. Also reenacting chapter 2.04, mayor and commissioners in Title II of the City of North Sioux City Municipal Ordinance Code. Did I read the right thing?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to first reading of ordinance 2025-04. This is an ordinance repealing chapter 2.08 and reenacting chapter 2.08, appointed officers and employees in Title II of the City of North Sioux City Municipal Ordinance Code. Look for a motion to approve that.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, the third piece, first reading of ordinance 2025-05, an ordinance amending the City of North Sioux City Municipal Ordinance Code to update terms to the new commission form of government. I'll look for a motion to approve this.
I'll motion to approve it.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Now we're moving on to approval of alcoholic beverage licenses. There's a whole list here. I entertain a motion to approve the liquor licenses.
I make a motion that we approve the malt beverage license.
Okay? I'll second that.
Maybe you could just refer to
Oh.
those that are listed.
As listed.
Okay. Any discussion on those? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, planning and zoning. So we've had two recommendations for alternate. Planning and zoning members, one is Tim Jacobs and one is Dave Leahy, both as alternates to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there any other, we look for a motion on that? Or do you want to do them individually?
I would
or-
do them individually,
Okay.
yes.
I guess I'll make a motion for Dave Leahy as an alternate.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that's approved. And then I'll look for a motion for Tim Jacobs.
I would so move for Tim Jacobs.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. All right, we have to approve some bills.
I make a motion to approve the bills.
I'll second it.
Whoever,
Whoever.
either one.
All right, any discussion?
No.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, motion carries.
Could I
That's-
mention one other thing before we adjourn?
You bet.
The Governor's Office of Economic Development, we were talking about this earlier, I forgot to mention it, I apologize earlier. But the Governor's Office of Economic Development is having listening sessions in regards to the CDBG DR funding, the 15 million that came from HUD to the state of South Dakota, designated for 57049 zip code. And they're having 2 listening sessions for elected officials, and that's just so that you don't have quorums at those meetings. They're having one with the schools, one with the businesses, and one with the community homeowners. The ones with the elected officials are going to be May 21st here in City Hall, and the 2 sessions are between 4 and 5, and 2:30 and 3:30 on the 21st. And so I just kind of penciled out if Chris and Lynn could come to the 2:30 and 3:30 one, and Vince and Jessica come to the 4 and 5 one. I thought that might be the best with Vince's schedule with the school. I guess you won't be in school anymore, though.
Yeah, still got, we'll have track stuff going on.
Okay. Could you make the 4 to 5?
Yeah.
Okay. So Vince and Jessica would be at 4 to 5. Chris and Lynn would be from 2:30 to 3:30. And then the community homeowner one would be at 5:30 to 6:30 at the community center. And that would. Huh? Oh, it'll be here too? Okay. We'll be here, Chris and Julie. Chris would have to go to a second one if you want. You don't have to go to that one.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
And then Julie could come to that one so that she would get exposure to it too. But the idea of it is to, what the governor's office is trying to identify within this process is the unmet needs within the community. And so they'll be listening to elected officials, schools, businesses, and residents to try to get a feel for that. The state of Iowa is going through the same thing with their CDBG DR. It's been designated for Northwest Iowa. So this is an opportunity to get in front of GOED and talk about what the needs of the community are. So hopefully we can get a good turnout for that, and you guys can participate in those events.
Is the resident one on the 21st too then?
Yes, and that's here, right? Yeah, here at City Hall.
There'll be flyers and
Yeah.
we're just waiting on those flyers to come, so we'll get them out there.
And what time was the resident one?
5:30 to 6:30.
Okay.
I bring up one thing before we go. Last time we were at the meeting, we talked about, we were supposed to check in on like the dirt that was gonna come out of the lake. And whether because we had the gentleman that was here that was gonna do the work, and he was talking about the dirt, we're gonna have to haul it down to the church or something like that. And I think there was gonna be some like follow-up on if we could get that. Like, I'd still like to know like why the dirt's not gonna go back in the holes that it came from. And we were gonna check on that, because you said something about the petition or whatever they called that thing that he was working under.
Oh, the permits.
Yeah, and we were gonna check and see if we could actually, and, because I asked the gentleman why we weren't putting the dirt back in the holes, and he goes, he didn't know.
I
And-
don't know that either. I just know
Can we
that,
follow up on that?
Yeah.
Because I think that's crazy to haul it down to the church and then we're not gonna use it back in the holes, I guess.
yeah, I know the one thing that they didn't want, only thing I know about that is South Dakota Game Fish and Parks did not want the dirt placed anywhere that it could get back into the lake.
Well, wouldn't the dirt we put back in there have a chance to get back in the lake anyway? I mean, if we had another situation that we had, wouldn't the dirt that we decided to put back in there go right back in the
Yeah, I
lake
think
anyway?
they were more concerned with they didn't want to place it on people's lots. They didn't want that liability or responsibility for that. And they didn't want to place it on the south side of North Shore with fear that it would just somehow wash back in there. That's all I know about it. That's a Game Fish and Parks project, and we've had very little.
So we have no say in that at all?
No, we don't,
But we could get a little better explanation, possibly.
possibly.
Just seems dumb to
And I
me.
do stress possibly.
Possibly. Yeah, they have not been very communicative on that process.
It just seems goofy.
There may be some other things we can do that I'm looking into, but I gotta get a little further along in that process before I can bring it to light.
I was just wondering if there was some explanation, because they just kind of decided that, and we were kind of out, and I kind of think it's our dirt.
Fair enough.
So, but anyway, if we could follow up on that or get some more information, I would love to hear that.
I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think wow, our first 1 hour meeting.
1 hour and 4 minutes.
All right. I guess I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
That's what happens when you have a meeting.